The winter of 1872 punished the small town of Blackwood, Massachusetts, with a fury that seemed determined to bury everything under its white mantle. The carriage transporting Eleanor Pierce shook violently on the snow-covered road as she observed the wooden houses that appeared and disappeared in the white landscape through the foggy window. Eleanor was 26 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, she had worked as a teacher in Boston. The letter from Mother Superior Agnes had arrived in a heavy envelope with the red seal of Sacred Heart Orphanage. "We urgently need an administrative assistant with your qualifications," it said. The salary offered was 3 times her teacher's pay, and after her father's death, leaving her with substantial debts, the offer seemed providential. The carriage stopped abruptly, and the coachman, a man of few words and a suspicious gaze, pointed to an imposing building that rose at the top of a hill. "Sacred Heart," he muttered, refusing to go further. "I'll have to leave you here, miss. The horses won't climb that hill after sunset." "Why?" she asked, confused. He merely shook his head, unloaded her suitcase, and departed quickly, leaving her alone at the base of the hill. Sacred Heart Orphanage was a 3-story Victorian construction with Gothic towers and tall windows. As she climbed the steep path, Eleanor noticed that despite being an orphanage, there were no sounds of children. The silence was absolute, broken only by the cutting wind and the creaking of snow under her feet. At the entrance, an elderly nun with a severe face greeted her. "Miss Pierce, I am Sister Martha. The Mother Superior awaits you." The corridors were cold and dark, illuminated only by candles that projected dancing shadows on the walls. They passed several closed doors, and Eleanor noticed that some had small crosses carved into them. Mother Superior Agnes was a tall, thin woman with grey eyes that seemed to penetrate Eleanor's soul. Her office was austere, with a large crucifix on the wall and piles of books and documents. "Miss Pierce, welcome to Sacred Heart. Your reputation as an educator and administrator precedes you." "Thank you, Mother. I'm eager to meet the children." An uncomfortable silence hung in the air. "The girls are in a period of seclusion and prayer. You will meet them tomorrow during classes. For now, I would like you to organize these records." She pointed to a stack of leather-bound books. "These are the admission and departure records of our residents. We need someone with fresh eyes to put them in order." As she leafed through the first records, Eleanor noticed something strange. Several pages had been torn out, and many names were crossed out with black ink. "Mother, it seems there is information missing." Her face hardened. "Some of our girls have been adopted by families who prefer discretion. Others have been called to serve God in distant convents." That night, Eleanor was led to her room on the 3rd floor, a small chamber with a narrow bed, a desk, and a crucifix on the wall. The window overlooked the orphanage cemetery, where small tombstones were aligned in perfect rows. As she prepared for bed, she heard a distant cry, like that of a child. She opened the door and peered down the dark corridor. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The crying stopped instantly. In the silence that followed, she heard hurried footsteps and the whisper of a dress. She returned to bed, but sleep did not come easily. In the records she had begun to examine, she noticed a disturbing pattern. In the last 3 years, dozens of girls had been registered as transferred or adopted without additional details, and all transfers always happened on the 3rd day of the month. Tomorrow would be the 3rd. The chapel bell woke Eleanor at 5 in the morning. She quickly dressed in the simple black dress that had been provided and followed the sound of singing voices. In the chapel, she found the nuns lined up on wooden benches, chanting hymns in Latin. Behind them, about 30 girls, all dressed in grey uniforms, sang in unison, their faces pale and their eyes downcast. She sat discreetly on the last bench, observing. The girls were between 6 and 16 years old, approximately, but they all shared the same empty expression, as if something had been extracted from them, After Mass, she was introduced to the children as the new administrative assistant and auxiliary teacher. None of them smiled or showed curiosity, only obedient nods of the head. During breakfast in the somber refectory, she sat next to Sister Martha, who supervised the girls with eagle eyes. "Are they always so quiet?" Eleanor asked in a low voice. "Discipline is the foundation of virtue, Miss Pierce. These girls come from broken homes, from situations of sin and degradation. They need to learn restraint and obedience." As she watched them eating insipid porridge, she noticed an older girl, perhaps 15 years old, with red hair and penetrating green eyes. Unlike the others, she observed Eleanor with intensity, as if wanting to communicate something. After breakfast, Eleanor was assigned to help in Sister Bernadette's arithmetic class. The girls solved problems in silence, but she couldn't take her eyes off the red-haired girl, who occasionally looked up at her. When the class ended, the girl deliberately dropped her pencil near Eleanor. As she bent down to pick it up, she whispered, "Library, history shelf, red book, midnight." Before Eleanor could respond, Sister Bernadette appeared at their side. "Catherine, return to your place immediately." The girl obeyed, but not without giving Eleanor one last meaningful look. During the rest of the day, Eleanor continued organizing the records in the Mother Superior's office. Taking advantage of her temporary absence, she examined the books more carefully. She discovered that in the last 3 years, 71 girls had been registered as transferred or adopted. No destination address, no adoptive family name, just the word ascended written in Latin in the margin of each entry. More disturbing still, all transfers occurred on the 3rd day of the month and always involved girls between 12 and 16 years old. Today, the 3rd day, would there be another transfer? At night, after the orphanage fell silent, she waited until midnight and silently slipped through the corridors to the library. It was a spacious room, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a large central table. She found the history section and looked for the red book mentioned by Catherine. It was an old volume about the history of Blackwood. Upon opening it, she discovered that several pages had been cut out, but between pages 42 and 43, she found a folded piece of paper. It was a rudimentary map of the orphanage, with an area marked in the basement that did not appear on any official plan. "They're going to take her today." Eleanor almost screamed upon hearing the voice behind her. Catherine was standing at the door, dressed in her white nightgown, her red hair loose over her shoulders. "Who? Take who?" Eleanor whispered, her heart racing. "Rebecca. She turns 13 today. It's always on the birthday when we complete enough years." "Enough years for what, Catherine?" She approached, her green eyes shining in the dark. "For the sacrifice. They say we are chosen to serve God, but in reality, we are offered to something much older that dwells beneath this earth." A noise in the corridor made her turn abruptly. "Go to the basement. There's a door behind the old boiler. That's where they take the girls, but be careful. The mother has eyes everywhere." Before Eleanor could ask more questions, she disappeared into the shadows. Eleanor kept the map in her pocket and hurriedly returned to her room, her mind buzzing with questions. Around 2 in the morning, she was awakened by a distant chant. She got up and peered out the window. In the courtyard below, 5 nuns formed a circle around a girl in a white nightgown. She recognized Rebecca, one of the youngest girls in the class. They were leading her toward a side entrance that, according to the map, led to the basement. Without thinking twice, Eleanor put a shawl over her nightgown and silently left the room. Following the map, she found a service staircase that descended to the basement level. The air grew colder and damper as she descended, and a strange smell, like wet earth and something metallic, filled the environment. In the basement, she followed the sound of chanting until she found the old boiler mentioned by Catherine. Behind it, partially hidden by stacked boxes, was a dark wooden door with carved symbols she did not recognize. The chanting came from behind that door. She approached and found a small crack through which she could peek. What she saw froze her blood. In a circular chamber excavated in the rock, the nuns formed a circle around a stone altar. Rebecca was lying on it, motionless, as if in a trance. Mother Superior Agnes, dressed in a red tunic instead of the usual black habit, raised a chalice above the girl's head. "Accept this offering, O Ancient One, another pure soul to feed your eternal hunger. In exchange, grant us another year of prosperity." At the back of the chamber, partially hidden in the shadows, Eleanor saw something that defied comprehension. A crack in the rock, from which emanated a pulsating greenish light, and inside it, something moved. She recoiled in horror, accidentally knocking over a box. The noise echoed through the basement. The chanting stopped abruptly. "We have an intruder," said the voice of the Mother Superior. "Find her." Eleanor ran desperately back to the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. As she climbed the steps, two at a time, she heard footsteps pursuing her. She managed to reach her room and lock the door, breathless. Through the window, she saw that the snow had stopped falling, and the moon illuminated the orphanage cemetery. It was then that she noticed something she hadn't realized before. All the tombstones had death dates on the third day of some month. 71 tombstones. 71 girls, and tomorrow there would be one more. Dawn brought a false sense of normalcy. The bell rang, prayers were said, porridge was served, but Eleanor knew that nothing was normal at Sacred Heart. Rebecca was not among the girls at breakfast, and when she asked Sister Martha about her, she received the rehearsed response. Rebecca was blessed with an adoption. A respectable family from Boston took her this early morning. Eleanor maintained a neutral expression, but inside her stomach was churning. She knew Rebecca had not been adopted. What she had witnessed the night before was something much more sinister. During the morning, she was called to the Mother Superior's office. She received Eleanor with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Miss Pierce, how are you adapting to our little world?" "Very well, Mother. The girls are obedient." "Yes, obedience is a precious virtue." She observed Eleanor for a moment too long. "I heard you were awake during the night. Any problem with your room?" Her heart accelerated, but she maintained her composure. "Just insomnia, Mother. The new environment, I suppose." "I understand. Perhaps an herbal tea would help. Sister Martha prepares an excellent one." She paused. "Miss Pierce, I would like you to accompany me to town today. We need to resolve some matters at the bank and the notary's office." It was an opportunity to leave the orphanage and perhaps discover more about the town and its relationship with Sacred Heart. Eleanor promptly accepted. The orphanage carriage took them down the snow-covered road to Blackwood. It was a typical New England town, with wooden houses, a white church with a pointed tower, and a main street where commerce and services were concentrated. At the bank, Eleanor was introduced to the manager, Mr. Holloway, a corpulent man with graying sideburns. He treated the Mother Superior with exaggerated deference. The funds were transferred as requested, Mother. The Prescott family was very pleased with the arrangement. Prescott. The surname was familiar to her. Then she remembered. In the records, the last entry before Rebecca was a girl named Sarah Prescott, transferred 6 months ago. While the Mother Superior conversed with the banker, Eleanor took the opportunity to discreetly examine the documents on the desk. They were receipts for substantial transfers to the orphanage, all from prominent families in the region. Next to each amount, there was an annotation: compensation for the ascension of name. Were they selling the girls, or was it something even more terrible? Their next stop was the notary's office. While the Mother Superior dealt with her business with the notary, Eleanor asked permission to use the restroom. In the corridor, she noticed a half-open door that led to the archive. Making sure no one was watching her, she quickly entered. The shelves were organized by year. She went straight to the section for 1869, when the disappearances began, according to her calculations. She found a book of death records and opened it. To her surprise, none of the 71 girls was listed as deceased. Officially, they simply no longer existed. She continued searching and found something even more disturbing, a book of property deeds. Sacred Heart Orphanage had been built on the ruins of an ancient indigenous temple, sold to the Catholic Church in 1820 for a pittance. A marginal note mentioned pagan activities and human sacrifices practiced at the site by the natives. She heard footsteps approaching and quickly put the books back in place, leaving the archive seconds before the notary passed through the corridor. Back in the carriage, the Mother Superior seemed satisfied with her business. As they returned to the orphanage, she broke the silence. "Miss Pierce, you must be wondering about our methods at Sacred Heart." Eleanor swallowed hard. "What do you mean, Mother?" "Our girls receive a special destiny. Not just any orphanage can offer that." Her eyes studied Eleanor. "The most influential families in Blackwood and surroundings depend on us to maintain their prosperity." "Through adoptions?" Eleanor ventured, trying to appear innocent. She smiled, a cold smile that did not reach her eyes. "Through necessary sacrifices. This land demands tributes, Miss Pierce. It always has, since before the first settlers arrived." Eleanor's blood froze. Was she openly admitting it? "I don't understand, Mother." "You will, soon." She looked out the carriage window. Blackwood prospered when other towns withered. No disease, no lost harvest, no natural disaster in the last 50 years. Do you know why? Eleanor did not respond. "Because we pay the price, a price in young, pure blood." She turned to Eleanor. "And you, my dear, will be part of it." When they returned to the orphanage, Catherine was waiting for Eleanor in the corridor, pretending to clean the floor. As she passed by, she whispered, "Library, midnight, brought help." During dinner, Eleanor observed the girls with new eyes. How many of them were marked for sacrifice? How did they choose the victims? And more importantly, how could she save them? At midnight, she slipped again to the library. Catherine was there, accompanied by a young man whom Eleanor recognized as the coachman who occasionally brought supplies to the orphanage. "This is Thomas," Catherine introduced. "He knows about the girls. His sister was one of them." Thomas had haunted eyes and calloused hands. "My sister, Emma, was brought here in 1869. They said she would have education and care. 3 months later, they informed me she had been adopted by a family in New York. I never believed it." "Why didn't you report it to the authorities?" Eleanor asked. He laughed bitterly. "The authorities, the sheriff, the judge, the mayor, they all have daughters or granddaughters who were saved by inexplicable miracles after making generous donations to the orphanage. Everyone knows, miss. Everyone participates." "It's a pact," explained Catherine. "The rich families deliver orphans and receive prosperity in return. Those who resist suffer accidents." "What exactly happens to the girls?" Eleanor asked, though she feared the answer. Catherine and Thomas exchanged glances. "There's something under the orphanage," said Thomas. "Something ancient. The natives called it the one who sleeps under the earth. They offered sacrifices to keep it dormant and receive its blessings. When the settlers arrived, they discovered the temple and tried to destroy it," continued Catherine. "But then came the diseases, the lost harvests, the deadly winters, until a priest made a new deal with the entity. The nuns choose girls who turn 13, explained Thomas. They say it's the perfect age, innocent enough to please the entity, but developed enough to feed it." A shiver ran down Eleanor's spine. "How do you know all this, Catherine?" "Because I'm next," she replied, her green eyes shining with contained tears. "I turn 13 tomorrow." The revelation hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Catherine would be the next victim, and she had less than 24 hours to prevent another sacrifice. "We need to get you out of here," she said, holding Catherine's cold hands. "All of you." Thomas shook his head. "It's not that simple. I tried to help other girls escape before. They never get far. It's as if the earth itself stopped them." "What do you mean?" "Sudden fog, trees that seem to change places, strange sounds that make them return out of fear. And those who actually manage to get away are found dead on the roads, as if they had accidents. Catherine nodded. The entity has eyes everywhere. The trees, the animals, even some people in town seem possessed sometimes. This explained why no one had reported the disappearances for so many years. It was a conspiracy that involved not just the orphanage, but the entire town of Blackwood. There must be records, Eleanor murmured, thinking aloud. Something that documents this practice over the years. The Mother Superior keeps a special book, said Catherine. A diary where she records each sacrifice since the orphanage was founded. She keeps it in a secret compartment behind the altar in the private chapel. How do you know this? I spied on her. I have abilities that the other girls don't have. I can move without being noticed, hear conversations from a distance. She hesitated. That's why they chose me to be next. They say I am specially gifted, which will make the sacrifice more powerful. Thomas consulted his pocket watch. I need to go before they notice my absence. I'll return tomorrow with the supply carriage. If you can get the book and have some girls ready, I'll try to create a distraction. After his departure, Catherine led Eleanor by an alternative path to the Mother Superior's private chapel. It was a small and richly decorated room, contrasting with the austerity of the rest of the orphanage. The altar was of black marble, with carvings of symbols that mixed Christian iconography with something much older. The compartment is behind that panel, whispered Catherine, pointing to the wall behind the altar. Eleanor approached cautiously and pressed different points of the panel until she heard a click. A small door opened, revealing a book bound in dark red leather. Upon touching it, she felt a strange sensation, as if the book were alive and pulsating. She opened it carefully. The first pages dated from 1820, written in an elegant calligraphy. Today, we made the first sacrifice to the Ancient One. The girl, Mary Sullivan, 13 years old, was offered according to the ritual. The blood was spilled in the crevice, and the entity accepted the offering. In exchange, the plague that afflicted the cattle ceased immediately. The pact is sealed. Page after page, the book documented monthly sacrifices in the early years, which gradually became quarterly, then semi-annual, and finally annual as the entity apparently became satisfied with fewer offerings. But in 1869, something changed. The Ancient One is restless. Tremors have been felt beneath the orphanage, and several girls have reported dreams of a hungry presence in the depths. We consulted the ancient texts and discovered that the entity's hunger grows every 50 years. We will need to increase the sacrifices. That was when the mass disappearances began. 71 girls in 3 years, and Catherine would be the 72nd. The last pages contained lists of donor families and the miracles received in exchange. Cures for terminal illnesses, inexplicable rescues from disasters, sudden fortunes. The entire town prospered at the expense of the blood of innocent children. A noise in the corridor alerted them. Quickly, Eleanor put the book back in the compartment and pulled Catherine behind a heavy curtain. The chapel door opened, and the Mother Superior entered, followed by Sister Martha. "Is everything prepared for tomorrow?" asked the mother. "Yes, the girl Catherine will be prepared at dawn. The ritual will begin at midnight, as always." "Excellent. And what about the new assistant?" Eleanor held her breath. "Miss Pierce. She asks many questions, but nothing we can't control." The Mother Superior smiled. "She may be useful. Young, healthy, without family. Perhaps the Ancient One will appreciate an additional offering this year." Eleanor felt Catherine squeeze her hand tightly. 2 sacrifices in one night? That hasn't been done since 1820, commented Sister Martha. "The Ancient One is especially hungry this year. The tremors have increased, and the girl's visions are more intense. We need to calm it completely before it fully awakens." After discussing a few more details of the ritual, The two nuns left. Eleanor and Catherine waited a few minutes before emerging from their hiding place. "They plan to sacrifice both of us," Eleanor whispered, fear tightening her throat. Catherine nodded, her face pale. "We need to act now. We can't wait until tomorrow. How many girls can we trust for an escape plan? 5 or 6 at most. The others are too indoctrinated or too frightened to help." They elaborated a quick plan. Catherine would gather the trusted girls, while Eleanor would look for a way to neutralize the nuns. They arranged to meet in the basement at 1 in the morning, near the back exit that led to the cemetery. Back in her room, Eleanor rummaged through her suitcase in search of something useful. Among her belongings, she found a vial of laudanum that her doctor had prescribed for her occasional headaches. It would be enough to drug some nuns, but not all. She needed more help. She then remembered the map that Catherine had shown her. There was a passage in the basement that did not lead to the ritual chamber, but to a tunnel that, according to the map, extended beyond the limits of the orphanage. At 1 in the morning, she found Catherine and 5 other girls in the basement. They all looked terrified but determined. "I managed to put laudanum in the tea of the night shift nuns," Eleanor whispered. "But it won't last long. We need to be quick." Catherine pointed to an apparently solid stone wall. "The secret passage is there, but I don't know how to open it." Eleanor examined the wall carefully, remembering the symbols she had seen in the Mother Superior's book. She pressed some stones in a specific sequence, and to their surprise, a section of the wall slid to the side, revealing a dark tunnel. "Let's go," she said, lighting a lantern. "Stay together and be silent." The tunnel was narrow and damp, with roots hanging from the low ceiling. They advanced slowly, the air getting heavier with each step. After what seemed like an eternity, they saw a faint light ahead. They emerged in a clearing in the forest, about 1/2 kilometer from the orphanage. Snow was falling softly, covering their tracks as they advanced. "Where do we go now?" asked one of the girls, shivering from the cold. "To the train station," Eleanor replied. "It's 5 kilometers from here. If we can get there before dawn, we can catch the train to Boston." But as she spoke, she noticed something strange. The snow around them began to melt in perfect circles, and a greenish vapor emanated from the ground. "It knows," whispered Catherine, her eyes wide with terror. "The Ancient One knows we're escaping." The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and in the distance they heard the orphanage bell ringing despite the late hour. "Run!" Eleanor shouted, taking the hand of the youngest girl. They ran through the forest, the ground shaking more violently with each step. Behind them, they could hear voices and see the glow of lanterns. The nuns had discovered their escape. The forest seemed to come alive around them as they fled. Tree branches reached down like grasping hands, roots emerged from the snow to trip them, and the wind howled with what sounded like distant screams. Eleanor led the small group, clutching the hand of the youngest girl, while constantly looking back to ensure no one was left behind. "It's trying to stop us," Catherine gasped, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "The Ancient One controls the land itself." As if to confirm her words, a massive crack suddenly appeared in the ground before them, forcing them to change direction. The orphanage bell continued to toll ominously, its sound carrying unnaturally far through the winter night. "This way," Thomas called, appearing suddenly from between the trees. His face was pale with fear, but his eyes were determined. "I brought the supply wagon. It's hidden just beyond that ridge." They followed him, struggling through deepening snow that seemed to deliberately impede their progress. Behind them, the voices of the nuns grew louder, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies in the darkness. "Blasphemers! Thieves!" Mother Superior's voice carried on the wind. "You cannot escape what lies beneath." When they finally reached the wagon, Thomas helped them climb aboard quickly. The horses were skittish, rolling their eyes and stamping nervously. "They sense it," Thomas muttered, taking the reins. "The Ancient One's influence is spreading." As they set off, Eleanor looked back toward the orphanage. What she saw made her blood run cold. The building seemed to glow with an eerie greenish light. and the ground around it undulated like the surface of a disturbed pond. Most terrifying of all, dark figures moved among the trees. Not just the nuns, but other shapes, hunched and inhuman, that seemed to flow rather than walk. "What are those things?" she whispered. Catherine pressed against her, trembling. "The taken ones, girls who were sacrificed but not fully consumed. Their spirits are bound to the Ancient One, forced to serve as its eyes and hands in our world." The wagon lurched forward as Thomas urged the frightened horses to greater speed. They careened down the forest path, branches whipping past their faces, the wooden wheels bouncing dangerously over roots and stones. "The train station is still 3 miles ahead," Thomas shouted over the wind. "If we can reach it before dawn, there's a freight train bound for Boston." Eleanor clutched the side of the wagon as it tilted precariously around a bend. The younger girls huddled together, whimpering in fear. She tried to comfort them, but her own heart was racing with terror. Suddenly, one of the wheels struck a hidden obstacle and splintered. The wagon tilted sharply, throwing them all into the snow. Eleanor scrambled to her feet, helping the others up. "We'll have to continue on foot," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Stay together." They abandoned the broken wagon and pressed on through the forest. The snow was falling more heavily now, reducing visibility to mere feet. The cold bit through their inadequate clothing, and Eleanor worried that the younger girls would succumb to exposure before they reached safety. After what seemed like hours of struggling through the blizzard, they emerged onto a road. In the distance, they could make out the faint lights of the train station. "We're almost there," Eleanor encouraged, though her own strength was failing. "Just a little further." But as they approached the station, a figure stepped out from the shadows to block their path. It was Sheriff Blackwood, his badge gleaming in the dim light, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. "That's far enough, Miss Pierce," he said, his voice cold. "You and these children need to return to Sacred Heart immediately." Eleanor stepped forward, placing herself between the sheriff and the girls. "These children are being sacrificed to some pagan entity beneath the orphanage. The whole town knows and does nothing." The sheriff's expression didn't change. "What happens at Sacred Heart ensures the prosperity of Blackwood. My own daughter was dying of consumption 3 years ago. After I contributed to the orphanage's special fund, she made a miraculous recovery." "You sold your soul," Eleanor said in disgust. "I saved my child," he countered, "and preserved our town. The Ancient One has protected Blackwood for generations. No disease, no crop failure, no economic hardship. A few orphans no one wants anyway is a small price to pay." "They're children," Eleanor cried. "Innocent lives." "They serve a greater purpose," came another voice. Mother Superior Agnes emerged from the swirling snow, flanked by several nuns. Her eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light. "And now you've awakened the Ancient One's full wrath. Feel the earth beneath you, Miss Pierce. It hungers." As if on cue, the ground began to shake violently. Cracks appeared in the road, and from them rose the same greenish vapor Eleanor had seen in the forest. The air filled with a low, pulsing hum that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. "It's coming," Catherine whispered in horror. "The Ancient One is rising." The sheriff drew his pistol, but his hand shook so badly he could barely aim it. "This wasn't part of our arrangement, Mother Agnes. You said it would stay dormant." "The pact is broken," the Mother Superior replied, her voice strangely calm. "The offerings have escaped. Now it will take what it needs." The tremors intensified. Buildings in the distance began to collapse, and screams could be heard from the town. The train station's wooden platforms splintered and buckled. In that moment of chaos, Thomas grabbed Eleanor's arm. "The train! It's arriving now!" Through the swirling snow, they could see the headlamp of an approaching locomotive, its whistle shrieking above the rumble of the earth. "Run for it!" Eleanor shouted to the girls. "Now!" They sprinted toward the station as the ground continued to heave beneath them. Behind them, the sheriff fired his pistol, but the shots went wild. The Mother Superior began chanting in a language that sounded ancient and terrible. As they reached the platform, the freight train screeched to a halt, its engineer staring in horror at the destruction around him. Thomas wrenched open the door of a cargo car, and they began lifting the girls inside. "Hurry!" he urged as the tremors grew stronger. Eleanor helped the last girl aboard and turned to assist Catherine, but the red-headed girl had stopped several feet away, her face a mask of resignation. "Catherine, come on!" Eleanor cried, reaching out her hand. "I can't," Catherine replied, tears streaming down her face. "It's calling me. I can feel it in my blood." "Fight it," Eleanor pleaded. "I've been marked since birth for this," Catherine said, "but you can save the others. Take them far from here, where the Ancient One's influence can't reach." Before Eleanor could respond, a massive fissure opened between them, separating Catherine from the train. The girl stood on the other side, her white nightgown billowing in the unnatural wind. "Go," she shouted. "I'll try to seal it back." "I won't leave you," Eleanor cried. "You must. It's the only way." Catherine turned toward the approaching nuns and raised her hands. To Eleanor's astonishment, the ground before Catherine heaved upward, creating a barrier of earth and stone. "She has the old power," Thomas said in awe. "That's why they wanted her so badly." The train whistle blew urgently. The engineer was preparing to depart, terrified by the supernatural events unfolding around them. With a heart full of anguish, Eleanor allowed Thomas to pull her aboard the train as it began to move. Through the open door, she watched as Catherine stood alone against the darkness, her small figure growing more distant with each second. The last thing Eleanor saw before the train rounded a bend was a column of greenish light erupting from the earth, where Sacred Heart Orphanage stood, illuminating the night sky like a beacon of otherworldly power. As the train carried them away from Blackwood, Eleanor gathered the trembling girls around her. "You're safe now," she whispered, though her own tears fell freely. "I promise you're safe." But even as the miles stretched between them and the horror they had escaped, Eleanor knew that the story of Sacred Heart Orphanage and its terrible secret was far from over. Somewhere in her bag was the journal she had managed to take from the Mother Superior's chapel, evidence of decades of sacrifices and corruption. And somewhere behind them, Catherine faced an ancient evil alone. Eleanor made a silent vow. As the train sped through the night, she would find a way to return. She would expose the truth about Blackwood and Sacred Heart, and somehow she would save Catherine and put an end to the horror beneath the orphanage once and for all. But as the distance grew, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Ancient One's influence stretched far beyond the boundaries of that small New England town, and that its hunger, once awakened, would not easily be satisfied.